All right. So our friend Max Blumenthal has been very, very busy, not just in his personal life lately, but it's amazing the output that he has generated given all of that. And he came out with another banger last night. Top pro-Israel TPUSA donor terminated support for Kirk in days before death, sources say. Ultra-Zionist billionaire Robert Shulman was one of Charlie Kirk's most committed donors. But as Kirk fell under attack for his increasingly critical Israel views during his final weeks, sources say Shulman ended funding for TPUSA. As his campus tour approached, Kirk was subjected to an almost daily lobbying campaign from Netanyahu's allies. At the front of the TPUSA complex is the Bill and Rebecca Dunn Freedom Center, named for the late commodity trader Bill Dunn. Adjacent buildings feature plaques commemorating the mega donors who have fueled the rise of the conservative movement, from the Uline family, I hope I'm saying that right, not really, but it'd be nice to the Koch brothers, to evangelical Christian asset manager Foster Fries. Caddy corner from the Freedom Center is the Pearson Building. According to a TPUSA insider, this structure was to be emblazoned with the name of one of Kirk's largest and most committed backers, the tech mogul Robert Shulman. A preeminent funder of right-wing Zionist and anti-Muslim causes across the Atlantic, Shulman's millions helped transform Kirk from a young age into one of Israel's most effective Gentile assets. Shulman's Millions could be the name of like a bank. Shulman's Millions, be an ice cream stand. However, as Kirk drifted from the official Netanyahu-enforced line on Israel in the past year, expressing frustration with onerous demands from Zionist donors and hosting the leading conservative critics of Israel at his TPUSA events, Shulman apparently grew resentful. A TPUSA insider has told the Grayzone that Shulman recently canceled plans to erect the plaque bearing his name inside the conservative organization's office complex. Those who contribute $1 million or more to TPUSA become eligible for an honorary plaque, but Shulman's donations were said to be considerably higher. Few donors have done more than Shulman to fuel the influence of the Zionist movement's anti-Muslim pro-Likud wing inside the United States. So here is a tweet from Loki. This is him back in 2021 talking about he uses the pen as his sword and the pen to fill out his checkbook.
Use the pen, who by their writings support those who do the actual fighting. I would like to be on the front line, wielding a sword in this battle, but that wasn't meant to be. So instead, I wield a pen. I'm a writer. Now, most of you don't know that, but for the past 20 years, I've written one book each year. Now, none of my books have made it to Amazon Top 10, and certainly not to the New York Times bestsellers list.
Imagine that.
The book that I just finished writing this year is entitled 2019. It's a checkbook.
Get it? They're checkbooks. That's why they're not on the bestsellers list. These are the jokes, people. These are the unfunny.
Try
Jews.
the fish.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yes. It's a checkbook. That's why it's not on the New York Times bestseller list. You notice the people went along with that joke because, New York Times, left-wing rag, right? Yeah. Ooh.
Titled 2019. It's a checkbook. With this pen and my checkbook, I provide ammunition. I wield a pen to provide ammunition to those organizations like ZOA who are on the front lines in this battle.
So you notice the just very militant language coming from a guy who's just like likening the pen to a sword, right? And these are the kinds of people
ammunition.
Who Charlie was kind of in deep with, the last few months. Besides nurturing the career of Kirk, Shulman has sponsored the David Horowitz Freedom Center, named for the neocon operative who Kirk described as his mentor. Anti-Islam.
You know who else considered him a mentor? Stephen Miller.
Oh, is that right? Horowitz?
That's going to come up in the Miller story too, yeah.
Interesting. Anti-Islam activists from Frank Gaffney to the English hooligan Tommy Robinson to Dutch politician Geert Wilders and Canada's rebel media have benefited from Shulman's support as well. Shulman has also invested substantially in the career of Laura Loomer, a former rebel media personality and fanatically anti-Palestinian provocateur who enjoys direct access to Trump and members of his inner circle, shaping personnel and policy decisions while lashing out at insufficiently pro-Israel staffers. Weeks before the TPUSA founder's killing, Loomer blasted Kirk for his inconsistent support for Israel. She was especially piqued by Kirk's platforming of Tucker Carlson, whom she branded an uppity, waspy snob who serves as a mouthpiece for Iran and Qatar. Quote, Charlie speaks out of both sides of his mouth. His messaging is all over the place, and some of us just want to know where he stands, Loomer tweeted on July 12, 2025. She went on to call Kirk a political opportunist and a charlatan who stabbed Trump in the back by hosting Dave Smith, an anti-Zionist podcaster and comedian at TPUSA Summit. Now, here is that tweet. Now, what I will say for Loomer, and, like I said, like none of this is to make any accusations about who killed Charlie Kirk. I think these stories have tremendous news value irrespective of that because it just shows behind the scenes how Israel manipulates public opinion. What makes guys like Ackman and some of the people in this story attract suspicion more so than Loomer is that they lie about having argued with Charlie Kirk. Loomer, to her credit, comes out and gives what is a normal response, which is, yeah, we had our disagreements. I'm pretty open about that. She hasn't gone back to deleted tweets and tried to lie about things that she has said the way some of these other characters have. So I just wanted to add that in. Because she's behaving much less suspiciously than a lot of these other characters are like, well, we got along great. We were fine.
we can now conclusively say Charlie Kirk was not killed by Laura Loomer.
Right. Exactly. Take that off the clue board. Right. Grayzone was informed by Shulman, and the Grayzone was informed that Shulman announced his termination of contributions to TPUSA during a private dinner of another organization he funds, the American Freedom Alliance. According to an attendee of the event, which was held in Los Angeles on September 6th, Shulman stated that he would be ending his donations to Kirk, diverting them instead to a reliably pro-Likud anti-Islam group like the AFA, once again, American Freedom Alliance. The AFA's homepage is currently promoting a $250,000 matching fund donation from an unnamed donor directly below a tribute to Kirk. A photo shows Kirk speaking from the dais at a past AFA event. The tribute links to a eulogy which blames the left's consistent drumbeat of hate, of misrepresentation, of fomenting violence against us for the TPUSA founder's death. Again, it's very similar to Netanyahu coming out making a video.
Right.
Me? Not me.
Yeah.
How ridiculous.
Yeah.
Reached by phone. See, this is what I'm talking about. Shulman hung up as soon as this reporter asked him about his alleged statement announcing his termination of support for TPUSA. That's it. These characters don't even want to talk about it. Like Loomer actually tweeted at Max, who tweeted back at her. They've actually been somewhat in communication on X in the public view. These other people are like, click, hang up, nothing. The Grayzone also contacted AFA President Karen Sigmund by phone and asked her about Shulman's alleged comments regarding Kirk during her organization's gala. The only part I remember is about his generosity to us. A seemingly irritated Siegmund commented before hanging up abruptly. Again, another hang up. Bill Whittle, a conservative pundit who emceed the September 6th AFA dinner, told the Grayzone he could neither confirm nor deny that Shulman had declared his intention to cut off funding to Kirk's organization. It was a private event, he emphasized. AFA has published several videos on its YouTube channel containing speeches from the gala, but Shulman's address is absent. Andrew Colvett, the executive producer and spokesperson for TPUSA, who put out the Magic Bullet story the other day, did not respond to a request for comment delivered by direct message to his personal Twitter X account, where he follows this reporter, meaning Max, of course.
Right.
You also have Max citing this. Mike Cernovich tweeting out on the 13th, Charlie was about to lose his last major donor because he refused to ban Tucker Carlson from events. There are a lot of people shedding crocodile tears. The billionaires must be exposed for the cretins that they are. Along with the apparent rift between Shulman and Kirk, the Grayzone has learned that Netanyahu's U.S. allies intensified their campaign to manage the late TPUSA founder as his fateful first campus tour date approach. So once again, I think there's tremendous news value in all of this, irrespective of who was responsible for Kirk's death. And I think it is likely, in my view, that Tyler Robinson was involved much in the way that Lee Harvey Oswald was involved in the assassination of JFK. The issue is that, and what is widely theorized, I think correctly, is that Oswald, in that case, did not act alone, that there were collaborators. You saw Kash Patel validate a lot of those questions in his tweet the other day, saying we're looking into accomplices. So all of this inquiry has legs, and it's actually getting the attention of people. What they do with that, is that an opportunity for them to create some other cover story? Possibly. I would say probably, but there's clearly validity to this speculation, as indicated by the response of people in and around real power. And I think it is incredibly useful to take this peek behind the curtain, which is why I was so grateful to Max's reporting on this, because whoever killed Charlie Kirk, and for whatever reason, it is incredibly, I think, important to look behind the scenes at how this support for Israel is really manufactured through strong arm tactics, whether they did it or not. And I apologize to people who watch the show every time. We have first time viewers who watch these clips. I'm not wed to any specific narrative. We are a left wing channel. We made our bones in this space by being willing to criticize some facets of the left. So I'm willing to accept any narrative that's proven true and condemn the shooting, no matter what the truth of this is. But that's very much an open question right now. And every development like this, I think, just validates the further inquiry into what actually happened here.
I think a lot of what you're seeing with this is the result of crackpots running these kinds of conspiracies and not being competent enough to cover their tracks well. No people with basic competence would have released those text messages and purported that this is how 220 somethings were talking to each other while one of them was on the run from the authorities. It was like text messages written by the Bronte sisters in the middle of this assassination by a couple of Gen Zers. It makes absolutely no sense. But you know what? It makes sense if you think of getting Crazy Eyes Patel to put out the propaganda and the cover story. Yeah, that's what you would get. That's what a moron like that would put out as a cover story. And now Patel pretending, in my opinion, to take a lot of what people are noticing seriously is just a prelude to sheepdogging them back into the official narrative, or attempting to, very much like they did with the Epstein files, right? Oh yeah, no, we're on it. Oh, turns out nothing to see here. That is, I would bet a lot that that's how his investigation is going to conclude. It goes back to what Oliver Stone said in JFK, or the words he put in the mouth of Garrison. Even if you don't think this theory or that theory is true, there's just no way that the official story is true. If you look at all of these dots and connect them, there's just absolutely no way what they're claiming happened is what actually went down. We just saw the story about you're claiming Charlie Kirk had Superman bone. I mean, come on. And I have connected this to Butler, which was another case where you had a kid around the same age, no obvious motive to do something like that, who happened to appear in a BlackRock commercial of all things. This stuff looks very MK Ultra for anyone who has not read Tom O'Neill's Chaos. I would highly recommend it to help you consider some of what the government might be capable of in terms of programming people to set themselves up as patsies in these situations. I'm not saying that's what happened, but it kind of looks that way. Looks a lot more that way than what they're saying happened.
Well, yeah, especially when you see them so wedded to one specific narrative. Like, it does not look like they are trying to really get to the bottom of this. They had this whole trans thing ready to go,
Yes.
the second this happened.
Oh, lo and behold, they come up with a trans angle when they were saying it from The second this happened, they were putting that out there.
Exactly. And don't take our word for it. Watch Michael Savage. The thing with the trans boyfriend bullshit. Like, you got people from all over the political spectrum asking these questions, and this is why it's worth asking these questions, because look,
can't take the bullshit from this fucking government. It's lying to us.
Exactly. Support for Israel in this country is much more manufactured than real, and it is eroding very quickly amongst young people on both sides of the aisle. You saw Megyn Kelly and Tucker talk about this, how young people, this is what largely, I think, led Charlie Kirk to start to ask these questions was, you have this organization with all these chapters, with all these young people, you start to see a brewing of sentiment that if you as the leader do not respond to, that's going to spell doom for your organization at some point. Because at some point, if you're leading young people and young people are mostly on one side of this issue and you're on the other, then, that's going to put a sort of a short era of influence on your organization. So you have to adapt. And adapting is very tough because a lot of the money people, as we're learning, were insistent that he not ask those kinds of questions, or even platform people who are asking those kinds of questions. And so what we're seeing here is that there was tremendous tension between them in the final months of his life. Now, whether or not that connects to his killing, that is still an important news story either way.
Of course. Well, when you look at some of the memes floating around among younger conservatives or libertarian or right-wing people, like noticing is antiseptic, like those things are not coming out of the libs. That's not coming out of the left. That's coming from the conservatives. And it's actually a good example. One of the most bizarro world elements of the modern era for me has been to see how, because the so-called left, the liberal, the establishment portion of that identifies as left, has become so conformist, the kind of like very rebellious wordplay and kind of inventive iconography, what you today would call meme play, but back in the day it would have been artwork in magazines or on t-shirts that are extremely subversive and critical of the system. It's really coming out of young people who identify as on the right and as conservatives. And because they are coming at things with really a counterculture perspective, much more so than any portion of the left that's tied to the Democratic Party. You have this portion of the self-identified right that is still tied to the Republican Party that is subversive and prone to deconstruct narratives. So if anything, like that kind of real examination of the whole picture of the Zionist influence project, a lot of that online is coming from their own base.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is largely a function of the fact that they won, right? They achieved power. So that means you're going to have a lot of support still inside the party because they still feel like they're invested in some way because broadly speaking,
there's something in it for them.
There's something in it for them. Like if Bernie had won the presidency, we would have been, jockeying for position in the same way that a lot of these people are.
We'd be Pod Save America now.
Yeah, right, exactly. We'd be Pod Save America. We'd be the ones who are like, all right, we still support Bernie, but God damn it, you're wrong on this. Come on, like we'd have been in that position, right?
Yeah, sure.
Because we would have
owned it.
Well, we'd have felt, as Charlie, I think, felt, that it's like you came all this way to get power. Now you have some power. Do you just burn the people in power because you're starting to think differently about this thing, or do you try to negotiate that in some way? And that became very tense, obviously.
Please clap.